good morning. Welcome to White Guy in Sunglasses in a Van Rambling. So, today, I was actually going through some of my old, voice clips, because I used to record these just as voice clips to send to, the DMs, the other DMs that I play with, other people I play with. But I eventually decided to move to YouTube videos instead because it's easier to kind of categorize and post, and my friends that listen to my videos can just go right to my channel and listen to them there. It's easier for them, and it's about the same difficulty for me, except now I have to record my face. I don't have a problem with that. So I was going through some old videos or recordings. They're not videos. Even when I was recording those, I still would use the term video when they were just voice clips. But I was going through them, and I had two of them that were discussing both building character motivations and what happens when a character motivation runs out, keeping your character in the campaign, and then another one talking about character growth. And I figure those are pretty adjacent, parallel topics, and might as well talk about them at the same time. And, as always, I am going to use, quote, real-world examples of my own characters. Because, everyone loves talking about their own characters, so I might as well do that. So, one of the big things about making a character is they need to have some sort of motivation, some justification why they would be an adventurer, and in a standard D&D setting, why they would join up with this group of fucking weirdos and go around and fight trolls, clear out dungeons, and get loot. A lot of the time, a motivation can be as simple as, I just need money. And I have a particular skill set, blah, blah, blah. It could be whatever. It could be a cleric just wants to raise funds for his church, so he goes out and he becomes an adventurer. There's any number of those things, but what you particularly run into, on occasion, is a character, or a player designs a character with a motivation like he wants to find his father. And, whether that father ditched the family because he's like a deadbeat dad, or he not ditched, but left the family to become an adventurer himself and acquire gold and get treasure and fund the family because they were destitute. He went out to find riches so that the family could live comfortably. Either of those, and then maybe that was 10 years ago and the father never came back, regardless of why he left. So you're going out to find your dad, whether you want to give him a hug or punch him in the face. Well, what happens if in session 6 you find your dad and he's just the next town over running a tavern? He just met some new girl and just settled down over there and never came back to his original family. Well, one, that's fucked up. That would be real fucked up and kind of hilarious. But then, what happens to your character motivation now? Okay, you found your dad. You just go home? Or most of the time you have to find a new motivation for your character, which is kind of where I feel what I'm going to term major and minor motivations. That's probably not the best. Those probably aren't the best terms, but they're close enough. A major motivation is something that's big, long-term motivation, something that can't be easily solved, or hopefully can't be easily solved by whatever. And a minor motivation is something smaller, it's more tangible, it's more easily interacted with and, quote, solved. And in the case of my Ugliest Man Alive character, Raskus, his major motivation would be to redeem his family's name and redeem redeem his family's name, become a great heroic figure so that he can build his family's reputation, and they can, in his home city, his family can become royal knights again, which is something they were forbidden from doing because of his grandfather's actions. That's his major motivation. And there's no real way to do that easily. Like, that's like, you got to complete a whole campaign and, like, you know, save a whole region from a lich to get that kind of reputation. Then his more minor motivation is he wants to find his grandfather and punch him in the face and reclaim the third sword in the Ornagier family set, and just reunite all three of those swords because, like, his grandfather doesn't deserve it or something. That's a minor motivation, and that one is easily solved. Like, if we were to find Raskrus's grandfather in, like, 5 or 6 sessions, we could have that interaction. Raskrus could get back the sword, deal with his grandfather, and then whether the grandfather, like, you know, however that interaction goes, maybe his grandfather goes back home with news of what Raskrus has been doing, or maybe because they're, like, this is a noble samurai family, maybe Amrock, which is the grandfather's name, maybe Amrock's so confronted by his past crimes, maybe he commits seppuku right there. And that's the end of Amrock's story, and Raskrus carries that, maybe that guilt. I don't know if guilt's the right word, but it would probably be a melancholy, but at least his grandfather was strong enough to redeem their honor by doing ritual suicide in that case. Because that's part of these characters' cultures. But that would be solved. And that's no longer a driving force for that character. But then that major motivation is still there. And, you know, when a minor motivation gets solved and you get rid of it, I guess they're also technically what 5e calls bonds. Those are also pretty in line with what I'm going to call what I'm calling minor motivations. But yeah, like when you solve a minor motivation, maybe you have to come up with a new one. And that new one can just be something as simple as hanging out with your friends, whatever they want to do, or just continue along with the major motivation. Like, in a really simple example, the character of Grog in Critical Role, he didn't really have to, the closest thing you could call his major motivation is he has a very deep friendship with the other player character, Pike, who they have some backstory stuff. He saved her uncle, and then she saved him from Grog's Goliath herd, which is like a Goliath tribe. So they're very close. They're thick and thin. They're brother and sister. They're family. So he's just traveling with her, whatever she wants to do, more or less, and he has to keep her safe. But his more, I guess in this case, minor motivation is he wants revenge against the head of his tribe, his uncle. And later in the campaign, when they meet his tribe and he gets an opportunity for this, he does kill his uncle, get his revenge, and he claims a powerful artifact that his uncle had. So then that minor motivation is solved. And then what does he do after that? Well, he hangs out with his friends. And there's also a greater overarching plot of, hey, the whole country is taken over by super evil dragons. We got to do something about that, guys. So he's kind of embroiled in that, but he's mostly just kind of there hanging out with his friends, whatever they want to do. And once you've built up enough of a relationship with the other player characters, that's enough of a motivation. You don't need to have some sort of big driving force, as long as you have a really strong bond with the other player characters and you just want to be there and keep them safe. Like, this is kind of what's going to happen to my Curse of Strahd character, Senlir. He's a follower of the Raven Queen, and he gets visions from his goddess of targets, like people that he has to remove from this world or people he has to protect. So his main goal right now is protect the people that he has had a vision of, which are, in this case, the only ones remaining are Etzli and the Wanderer. He has to protect them. And Unta's along for the ride, but Unta's a funny goblin. Which will become a deeper part of this group, I guess, as time goes on. But his main motivation is protect this group. That's kind of the major motivation. And then the more minor motivation is to figure out why, if there's any other reason he came into Barovia in the first place. Because unlike the other characters who were kind of whisked away by the mists, Senlir entered them willingly at the behest of his matron, the Raven Queen. But he doesn't know why. He just knows he was sent in here at least to protect this group of people. But I'm going to say he didn't get that vision until he came in here. Before, it was just, hey, you got to go into Barovia. There's something you have to do there. There's something important that you will be a part of. And that's it. And that's all he knows. And that's like kind of leaning into that like chosen one prophecy bullshit that like you have to do a thing. What is it? I don't know. You'll find out along the way. And it's kind of set up that way, but it works well enough. But once we eventually beat Curse of Strahd and it transitions to a different campaign, different storyline, his minor motivations are going to change, but his major motivation is still going to be to protect this group. Likewise, my other character, Henich, he's a displaced lizard folk from a different continent, and his major motivation is he kind of has two. It's his major motivation is to fit in with this new civilization on this new continent and figure out how it works, whether he can fit in or not, or if he has to go home eventually. And then if he can fit in over here, decide whether he wants to just integrate into another society and just live out his days as part of that society. Maybe he'll want to try to establish a lizard folk culture or civilization over here on Erlmeyer instead of on Thalmeyer, which is that other continent. So those are his major motivations. He has to figure out his overall place in the world. Because for the most part, most of his life, he's just surviving. And actually, for most of his life, his major motivation was to get revenge on his uncle, the shaman. It's very Lizard Hamlet. It kind of did it accidentally. But he wants to get revenge on his uncle, who killed his father for the right to lead the tribe. And he was planning that for a while, and then some shenanigans happened. The whole tribe was killed by his uncle, and Henich wound up on the other continent. Now he's got to sort through this, and now he's part of this big storyline. The Crimson King has come back, blah, blah, blah. Which is an evil death god, don't worry about it. So, but now, what used to be his major motivation is now much more of a minor motivation. Kill his uncle. He's already killed his cousin, Gix, which was a little recurring antagonist we had. But those are his motivations, and they're likely to change. For a little while, it was deal with Gix. Now Gix is dealt with. Now he has to have a new minor motivation. In that same campaign, Zika, our rogue, that character is out searching for a set of like family heirloom tools that are like ancient dwarven tools that are very valuable, and he's out to find them. Like his family lost them years ago, and he's out to collect them all. And Zika's player, Zia, has mentioned, or has stated that, like, if Zika were to acquire all the tools, he might just fuck off back home, and then Zia has to come up with a new character. With the grand overarching threat of this death god, yeah, maybe not. That might not happen if Zika does collect all the tools, but maybe you don't have to worry about this character fucking off if he achieves this motivation. But that's the thing, you need to keep in mind, like, your characters need a reason to be a part of this adventuring group. And then likewise in my Site 27 campaign that I'm DMing, all the characters, they all have motivations, but it's not the same, because the setting, they're not an adventuring party, they're an MTF in the employ of the SCP Foundation, and they have rather disparate backgrounds. There's only 2 of them that are actually employees of the SCP Foundation, and the other 3 are from different groups. So they need motivations to keep them working together, and why a member of the Serpent's Hand, the Horizon Initiative, and a member of Are We Cool Yet would all be working with 2 members of the Foundation as an MTF. Why that would be a thing. And for the most part, there's a kind of, like, I came up with this idea of a, like, sort of personnel exchange program. The Foundation is trying to improve relations with certain groups, namely the Serpent's Hand, the Horizon Initiative, GOC, some other groups. So they'll see, as the campaign goes on, they'll see members from other groups that are working with the Foundation. And likewise, in return, both exchanging personnel, they're also more freely exchanging information between them, trying to form not exactly like an anomalous UN or Illuminati or anything like that, just a stronger alliance between groups that more or less have the world's best interests in mind, even if they have differing philosophies when you get down to the minutiae. And in some canons of the SCP Foundation, that does conflict, but one, there is no canon, so fuck off. But I think this can work well enough, and there's always going to be certain things that the Foundation is going to keep secret anyway. Like, right now, all of these characters, even the Serpent's Hand, the Horizon Initiative, and not so much the Are We Cool Yet member, but those 2 characters have standard level 2 SCP database clearance, so they can search the database if they want, and they can see everything that is in, like, under their clearance level to view and read. As the game goes on, they'll probably get higher and higher clearance levels, but that's a long-term thing. And they'll get little bits, like, at the end of this camp, at the end of this last mission, 3 of the characters, the 2 Foundation members and the member of the Serpent's Hand, were very cooperative in achieving the mission statement, and in their mission debriefing reports about what happened. The Horizon Initiative guy and the Are We Cool Yet member, they were not so cooperative, so they were not rewarded in the same way. The Serpent's Hand member, he got some extra, what do you call it? He got some extra clearance and extra information that he can now browse and bring back to the Serpent's Hand, and there's a more open communication through this particular personnel member. But otherwise, the one Foundation member who is a high-functioning drug addict, which is really strange, but it's working out. He just got a big bushel of cocaine, which isn't how I planned for things to go, but whatever. The researcher got some proposals approved. I didn't talk to that player yet about it, but I will. But the other 2 members, they didn't get the same kind of rewards. Instead, they got scolded. So those are like kind of differentiating character motivations for a very different setting. So, and along these, you also have both your character motivations and how your characters grow and change. Like for Rascris right now is embroiled in a little bounty hunter kind of quest that they've been given by this one noble to capture a man, bring him alive so that he can be tortured to death. This does not sit very well with Rascris, but Rascris does feel indebted to this noble because he was attacked, or their group was attacked by the noble's daughter and some other bandits, and they ended up killing the daughter because, as far as they knew, it was just a bandit. They didn't know it was, well, even if it was like a noble's daughter attacking them, like, this is still a fight. They're trying to kill me, so I'm going to end them. And that doesn't sit too well with Rascris either. He's not super fond about killing people right now, and he's killed a few people. It's kind of weighing on him a little bit, and he hasn't really been showing it. But I was thinking that we were going to capture this guy, bring him back, and then Rascris was going to pretty much just chew this noble out verbally and wish to never see him again. Call him a dishonorable man and leave. But with two new characters joining our group in this fight, more or less, that we're going to discover that they've been captured and been experimented upon by this guy that we're trying to bring back, this might color his opinion a little bit. Maybe this guy that we're trying to capture, bring back to torture, maybe he deserves it a little bit. Doesn't make it right, but maybe he deserves it. So this is going to create some conflict within Rascris a little bit, but this is just, character growth as it goes on. That character in the Curse of Strahd game, Senlir, I'm both still finding this character, but he's growing and figuring out exactly, like, he's growing, and then as the game goes on, he's going to grow more and more. But Heneage is growing more and more. He's figuring out a deeper connection to the homebrew god Dai that's in this setting. That he has a connection with this god. What the nature of the connection, he's not exactly sure, but there is something there, and he's kind of exploring that. And he's also exploring, caring about a group as more than just, this is the group that you have to work with to be stronger, because an effective group is stronger than an effective individual. But he's learning how to value them for more than just what they're capable of. That's still a big thing for him as a lizard folk, but he might be learning how to care more about them and kind of growing past that stereotypical lizard folk mentality. That's still going to be his main mindset, but that's going to be something that is growing past a little bit. As well as, like, learning to use more complicated weapons, like maybe a bow, a crossbow, a gun. Who knows? But, yeah, we'll see how all these different characters grow. And,